Greetings once again, MLAB here. Today I've got a tutorial for Open Broadcaster software. It's a very low impacting software for recording gameplay, monitors, anything you want for tutorials or general gameplay videos, even if you want to show your website. Okie doke, let's get into the settings. So you want to open it up. Basically you can set profiles if you want to stream even, but at the moment don't need to worry about that. For encoding you want to just use the default encoder, the X264, and don't use CBR. CBR is for streaming and you don't really need that. So depending on your computer you want to select the quality balance. For higher end computers you'll just want to go for the top end, but depending on the file size you want or the quality you want, you may decide to choose differently. For me, I've got it on 10. For the maximum bitrate, you want 10,000. It's pretty optimal, and I'm not sure, I think it's the default. But for smaller file sizes, just make it smaller. And if you want a higher quality video, then go higher. Make sure your buffer size and the max bitrate are the same. For audio encoding, it's more up to personal preference. For the bitrate, you should have about 128, but if you want to go high, you can, but that just increases file sizes. More than about 192 is not needed. For the codec, MP3 or AAC, doesn't really matter, it's personal preference. Just leave the format 48 Hz and the channel on stereo. For broadcast settings, you want to make sure it's on file output only. And for your recording path, like most programs, you want to browse and choose your file where you want to save it to. Make sure, unless you're streaming, do not use these keys. The ones you'll be wanting for recording gameplay are the start recording hotkey and the stop recording hotkey. Map them to something that you don't use in game. Otherwise you may start recording without meaning to. Moving on to the video, you want to make sure it's your best graphics card if you've got more than one, but for most computers you'll just have your default, but make sure it's there. For your resolution, you want to set it depending on what you play in. Say if you play in 1080p for your games, you want to have it in 1080p. For me, this is just my monitor size, and I will mess around with this once I mess around with my game settings. But until then, if you just play your monitor size, go with that. And if you've got more than one monitor, like me, you want to make sure it's on your main monitor that you use for gameplay. For resolution downscaling, if you want smaller file sizes, you will want to do this, but other than that you don't really need it. For frame rate, it's recommended that you have about 30 frames per second, because after all, YouTube only allows 30 frames per second. But for me, I've got mine at 40, so I've got a bit of play. For audio, you want to use your default, or whatever you use for listening to your gameplay, or music, or whatever you use. For your microphone, you'll definitely want to choose the best microphone you've got. For me, it is my headphone mic that I have got. For push to talk, you want to map it to something that you do not push in game. For me, I have mine as caps lock. And for the push to talk delay in milliseconds, don't need to really change that. But especially if you're not using push to talk, you'll definitely want to have a unmute microphone hotkey. This stops you from having all the background chatter and stuff in your recordings. For desktop boost and the microphone boost, you don't really need to change this, but you can test this out and see what your personal preference is. For me, because my microphone isn't really the loudest, I use 4. Onto the advanced. For priority class access, you'll just want normal. make sure it's on fast or very fast, but for worse computers you want super fast or ultra fast. Make sure use CFR is off. This is for streaming purposes. Other than that, most of the other things you don't need to do. Now on to the scenes. You want to right click on it and add a scene. Name it whatever you want. For example, recording 2 with no G. And then you want to create a source. You'll add. You'll click video, window capture, monitor capture if you're wanting to do tutorials like this. Game capture, and you can set the game as long as you've got it open at the time of doing this, and all these other things. Once you got that, when you go to record, make sure you've selected your preference and then start recording. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Sorry for the bad commentary. Have you got any comments, questions, even suggestions? Comment them below or tweet me on Twitter. Do you like this kind of video? Do you think I should do more? Let me know. And like always, have a great day.